Did you know that you can validate someone even when they're wrong and even when we disagree with how they're feeling? It actually increases our connection with others, builds empathy, and increases emotional resilience. Let's talk about that. So, first off, what is validation? Validation is the act of recognizing and accepting someone else's, sometimes our own, emotional experiences as real and understandable, even when they don't make sense. Validation is not whether these experiences are objectively real or correct. Instead, it's about saying, I see you and your feelings make sense in the context of your experience. You see, when we validate ourselves and others, we make space for our emotional experiences. Instead of repressing them, neglecting them, invalidating them, we give them the space that they need to exist. Validation builds empathy and trust with ourselves and with others. But let's clear up a very common misperception. A lot of people think, well, I can't validate someone because I don't agree with them. Validation is not about agreement. You can validate someone's perspectives without agreeing with them. In fact, it is necessary. For example, picture that there was a party that spontaneously occurred with a group of people that just happened to be present in the same room at the same time. Now, picture the next day someone approaching you and saying, hey, I feel kind of hurt that I was left out. In that moment, there's an opportunity to correct that person and say, well, it was spontaneous. It's not that you were left out. It's just that you just didn't happen to be there. I wouldn't feel hurt if I were you. That's very invalidating. And it takes their emotional experiences and rejects them, which to their experience only probably makes that emotional experience more difficult. Instead, we can validate by saying, I can see how that would be frustrating and even hurtful for you. You see the difference? We're actually acknowledging the other person's frame of reference. We don't want to filter our understanding of other people's experiences through the frame of our reference. We want to empathetically view the world through their eyes and understand how things are for them and validate. The exact same principle applies to self validation. We can make a mistake, for example, and feel pretty heavy emotions in response to that mistake. Sometimes we can invalidate ourselves in those instances and push away our emotional experiences by judging them. I shouldn't be feeling negatively about that. It was a mistake. I deserve to feel this way. And we're going to ignore our emotional needs in that moment. Validation honors our emotional needs and says instead, it's understandable that I feel maybe angry, frustrated, because this was really important to me. And it's really understandable to be upset that I made a mistake. You see how we actually honor and accept our emotional experiences through validation, as opposed to pushing them away or invalidating ourselves and suppressing them. Simply put, validation helps us accept our emotional experiences and process them healthily without repressing them and pushing them away. So, why is this important? When we suppress or reject our emotional experiences or the experience of others, it simply buries them. Later, they resurface, sometimes in ways that feel completely overwhelming or ways that are inconvenient. Validation allows us to integrate and process our emotional experiences, leading to increased emotional resiliency. It's also a really powerful tool for empathy. By validating, we acknowledge that our frame of reference is not the only one that exists, and others' frame of reference are just as valid and understandable as our own. Everyone's experiences shape their feelings, and it helps deepen our connection with others when we honor this and validate this. So, on the surface, we understand why validation is important. But let's open the hood a little bit and talk a little bit about the neuropsychology involved in validation. When we feel understood and validated, the amygdala, this almond shaped part of the brain that I talk about a lot, it's the part of the brain that's responsible for processing emotion. It calms down. This effectively reduces our stress response and allows a very important part of our brain to be part of the conversation, our prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking and problem solving. When we calm ourselves via validation, we allow the prefrontal cortex to take charge. Over time, this process strengthens neural pathways associated with emotional resilience. Validation also releases these feel good neurotransmitters called oxytocin, which is often referred to as the feel good bonding hormone. This helps foster feelings of connection and safety, whether we're validating ourselves or someone else. As these neural pathways strengthen, our ability to manage stress and recover from emotional challenges improves, contributing to our overall mental health. To contrast this, invalidation heightens the stress response. Have you ever talked to somebody and they just simply weren't able to have a calm conversation or even make logical sense? It seemed that they were thinking with their emotions. That's probably because the stress response is activated, meaning that the frontal lobe, that rational part of our brain, is just shut off and not available or part of the conversation. In these moments, pause and practice validation. If we validate the other person or ourselves being very important, we can then calm the stress response, come out of this fight or flight mode, and have more rational conversations. Repeatedly experiencing invalidation towards ourselves or from other people contributes to negative long term health outcomes. It means that we trust others less, we trust ourselves less. It means that we have higher emotional suppression and increased vulnerability to anxiety or depression. It means that we have higher emotional volatility, so we are less able to handle extreme emotions when they come up, and overall contributes to lower distress tolerance. In practice, have you ever met someone, or for yourself, have you ever had a experience where you go from 1 to 100 and there's no in between? Either I'm happy or I'm extremely upset. Probably a history of invalidation has something to do with it. Here's the great news. Practicing validation can start today. It's not too late. Neural pathways are not set in stone. Neuroplasticity is a thing. Practicing validation can increase our resilience, reduce emotional reactivity, and increase our empathy and understanding between each other. It's like flexing a muscle in the brain, but something that gets better over time as we practice it more and more. Validation is way more than just a tool for communication that your psychologist or therapist talks about. It's a way of improving our connection with other people, improving our emotional resilience, and leading to better mental health outcomes in the long term. By embracing validation, we open the door to greater empathy, greater emotional resilience, and a richer understanding of the diverse experiences that shape our world and the people around us. Thanks for listening and learning. If this video resonated with you, feel free to give it a like or maybe share it with a friend who might be wanting to learn this skill alongside you. In the comments section below, let me know what you think. Do you think validation is something that you're missing from your life, or has it been the key to greater emotional resilience for you? Let me know. I'll see you again next time.